So today we're going to be talking about reading and writing files. So the first thing we need to do is be able to create files. So what we're going to do is we're going to say file F equals new file. This is a main class. And we're going to give it a name like myfile.txt or bob.txt. We're making a file. This is like a doc or an Excel file. It's where you save information. And when you do this, you are not actually creating a new file. What you're doing is you're telling the computer that a file exists called myfile.txt. Now, have we created that file yet? No. So all we're going to do is we're going to do f dot, and we're going to access the functions, methods that the file has. And what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to create a new file. So with these two lines of code, I'm going to run it. And if you have the files portion open, you will notice that over here on the side it says what? It says myfile.txt. We just created that file. And now that I've created that file, I no longer need the line of code that says create new file because it's already created. So you can delete that line if you want. If you don't want to delete it and you just want to leave it there, that's perfectly fine because this is a no-risk function. If your file is already there, then it won't do it. If your file isn't there, it'll make one for you. So if you just have create new file every time, totally fine. It's a no-risk. It's a no-risk situation. We all good? So now on to some higher risk stuff. First of all, we're going to write to the file. So we need to create a file writer. I call it FW for file writer equals new file writer. And then in that file writer, I'm going to put the file that I want to write to. And then I'm going to make a print writer. I call it out. And I have to give the print writer the file writer. So now, you know how we've typically done system.out.println? Let's just get rid of the system dot, and let's just say out.println. And then I'll print hello. Now, out's not a special word. The reason we use out is because out is what we name the print writer. So if I had named my print writer Joe, then that would have been joe.println. So, so whatever you name your print writer, that's what you're going to print out. And then a print writer is a lot like a toilet because things just sit there until you flush. So it doesn't actually go and write things down all the time. When you say to go write, it holds it until you say, okay, now go. So when you want to actually send the stuff to the file, you have to do out.flush. And then when you're done, it's always polite to close the lid. So we'll do out.close. So then you run it, and nothing prints out, and it looks like nothing has happened, except you'll go to my file, or whatever you called it, and ta-da! Whatever you told it to print, it'll print, which is pretty nifty. Now, let's say that I want to add the word I don't know, Legos. Yeah, Lego My Ego. So I'm going to run it again, and I want you to go to my file And when you go to my file, you'll notice that something horrible has happened. What's happened? What happened to with the word hello? Hello is gone. Okay, you need to listen and pay attention to this. At the moment, the way that we're writing things, when you start writing a new file, everything else is gone. This is actually quite tragic if you forget to change this or not change the setting, because let's say that you have a database that you've been working for 5 years on, and you accidentally say, let's write the file. As soon as you start to write the file, everything goes away. And that's really bad because you can't get it back. There's no undo function because we're programming. We're the guys that make the undo function. So, if you leave the code like it is, you will erase everything. The way you don't erase everything is in the file writer, after the file, you put the word true. And I'm going to make a comment here that says true makes writer add to the file. If you leave off that true, it will erase everything and start anew. And now, when I run it, I can run it 3 or 4 times. And in Lego, and then I will have 3, or that's more than 3 or 4, but 6 times, I had 6 more Legos to it, right? So if you want to add to the file, you need to put the word true after the file, after that F in file writer. If you don't want to add to the file, if you want to start anew every time, then you just leave that off. So I want to get rid of this. Get rid of this. And let's do a for loop where we will write numbers from 1 to 1,000. Does that sound good? Okay. So for until I equals 0. We'll start at 1. I is less than or equal to 1001. I plus plus. Out.println. I. So then I run it. You will see that I have all the numbers from 1 to 1,000 in 1, apparently. Oh, I want to go to 1 to 1,000. Let me change that to 0. Whoops. There we go. All the numbers from 1 to 1,000. So lovely. Don't need a minute to type. So now that we've written a file, let's go ahead and read a file. Does that sound good? Okay. So glad you're enthusiastic. Yes, take the desktop thing. So we're going to go to the Java main class called Reading Files. Yes, we created 2 main classes. One was called Writing Files and one was called Reading Files. So then, I'm going to tell the computer that there is a file. I'm going to call it F. And it's called myfile.txt. Remember that when you say file F equals new file, myfile.txt, you're not actually creating a new file. You are making the computer aware of the existence of a file that already exists. Right? So we're not actually making a new file. When I read your comments, I don't want to see you're making a new file, because it'd be really tempting, because that's what it says. But you're saying this file exists. It's called myfile.txt. And when I use the letter F, I'm talking about that file. Or you could call it Joe or Bob or Sam or whatever you want. So far, so good? Okay. And now, whenever I want to read input, what have I used to read input from the keyboard? We've talked about two different ways to read input from the keyboard. You either use a scanner or a G-option pane. This time we're going to use a scanner. I call mine scan. And typically, we've put the words system.in into the scanner. But this time, I don't want to read from the keyboard. I want to read from the file. So I just put F. Because F is the name of the file that I want to read from. So far, so good? And let's make an integer called num1. And it'll read the next integer from the program. We'll make another one called num2. I'll make another one let's just add the 2 then. That'll be better. So num1 is the next integer, num2 is the next integer, num3 is the addition, and then we'll do system dot out print line num3. So now when you run the program, you get 3 because it read in what 2 numbers? 1 and 2. But just because I like to have fun, I could put like 1,111 and 22, and then I can run it, and hey, it changes because it read from the file, right? But I'm going to show you one other feature. I want to wrap those 4 lines of code that I just wrote in a loop. So apply the GIF wrapping, those curly brackets, and I like to be pretty, so I'm going to highlight those and hit tab. And this time, I'm going to do a while loop. And I'm going to ask the scanner, hey scanner, do you have another integer? Yeah, it's like go fish. Hey, do you have another integer? And what the scanner is going to do is, as long as it has an integer that it can offer me, then I will read 2 numbers in, add them up, and print it. And then I'll say, are there 2 more numbers is there another number I can read? And if it says yes, I read 2 numbers in, I print the number, and I go. Now this works because from 1 to 1,000 is an even number. If it was odd, then I'd be running into problems, right? Because at the end, I would say, hey, do you have another number? And he'd say, yeah. And then you read the first one, and then you try to read the second one, and it's not there, and you get all sorts of errors because it's trying to read a number that's just not there. So you kind of have to be careful when you're doing loops with, hey, while there's more to read, let's read it. But overall, we can say, hey, is there something else to read? And it says, yes, there is. So then you'll notice that it's adding up every number. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Right? If you wanted to multiply them, you could. If you wanted to have random numbers, you could. Hey, that'd be really fun. Let's go change our thing. Let's go change our writing file. And instead of doing out.println, just you could do new random. So this would make 1,000 random numbers in your file. Like so. And then you could run the reading files, and it would print out the additions of all those random numbers.